In this video, we're going to be taking a look at building a little farmhouse kitchen island. And it's a fun little project to make. It's an easy project. It takes about 6 2x4s to make up the framing, or should I say 2x3s. Now, my local Home Depots have been out of their 2x3s for some reason. So normally I would use 2x3s, but in this case I did have to use 2x4s. And then I ripped them all to the width of a 2x3, which is 2.5. And part of the reason that you probably would like to do that, it makes the overall frame less bulky, but also the primary reason we did it was the space between shelves. You get a little bit more space between the shelves because we're only using 2.5-inch material versus 3.5-inch material. Okay, so just some considerations there. Now I'm going to be building this predominantly with 3.5-inch screws. We could use pocket holes for the assembly, but if I don't absolutely have to use pocket holes, I won't. In this case, the customer is going to paint the frame, kind of a, that rustic farmhouse distressed look. So what we're going to do is we're going to just use regular construction techniques, and then the customer will fill in the screw holes and paint. A lot of times when I'm building and finishing, sometimes I will fill the holes, sometimes I won't. Sometimes the holes just add to the rustic nature of the piece. So it just depends on the customer preference. In this case, we're just building, we're not doing any finishing work, so I won't be plugging the screw holes. Screw holes plugging is on the finishing end for me. So in this particular case, it's strictly just the construction process. And then we're going to be using a prefab rubber wood butcher block top from Home Depot for the top of this. Okay, so we're going to get to building here. So what we have here is we have 6 legs that are 34.5 inches, and then we have these pieces here are there's 7 of them, and they're 18 inches, and then these 4 are 23 inches, and the last 4 here are 13 3/4. Now we are going to be needing some fence pickets for the shelving of our kitchen island, but we'll get to that when we get the basic frame put together, and we'll take a look at our shelving pieces. So for right now, we're going to start with our leg assemblies and go from there. So let me get prepped for that. All right, so this is our first leg assembly, and what we did is we came up. Here's our first leg assembly, and what we did is we came up from the bottom here 4.5 inches, and then we put in our piece. You can see we've got 2 3.5-inch screws from the outside. So I sunk these about maybe an inch in, but we have 2 3.5-inch screws going from both directions. So up from the bottom 4.5, and then down from the top, it works out to be 5 7/8. Okay, same thing, 2 3.5-inch screws. Now we could have used pocket holes and done it that way, and if you prefer to do that, not have those screw holes, that's certainly you could do that. I just thought, it's easier just to bang in screws from the outside and fill the screws if necessary, if the customer so chooses. Also, the other consideration is regular construction screws are a lot cheaper than pocket hole screws. So that's the other, and I just didn't want to mess with making pocket holes, I'll be honest. So at any rate, we need 2 of these, two of these leg assemblies just like this. So we'll go ahead and make another, and then the third leg assembly is a little bit different. So I'll go ahead and make one more of these, and then we'll take a look at the third leg assembly. Oh, I should point out too that the intermediate boards here are the 18 inches. So I thought I'd point that out quick. All right, so I'm gonna make one more of these, and then we'll put together the third leg assembly. So on the third leg assembly, what we have to do is we have to come up from the bottom 4.5, just like we did on the other two, but we also have to come up here to 20 3/4, okay? And this will all make a little bit more sense when we start putting all these leg assemblies together. But before we do that, on one of these leg assemblies, we also have to come up from the bottom up 20 3/4 and put another board in. And you'll, like I said, it'll all make more sense once we start putting these leg assemblies together. But that is one thing that we're gonna have to add to this leg assembly, one more at 20 3/4. So now we've gone ahead and added that extra board in place at that 20 3/4 mark. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use the remaining pieces. We've got a few of these 13 3/4, and then we have a few of these 23s, and that's what we're going to use to bring the 3 leg assemblies together. And essentially what we're going to do is just kind of connect the dots. These legs are going to go on just like that, so we're going to line it up right there to the inside. Now this is where those pocket holes, what we talked about previously, those pocket holes would come in handy, because then we could just put them in there. In my case, I don't think I'm going to mess with pocket holes for this project, but if we did, that's, you know, basically how they would go into place. So I think I'm just going to screw from the outside in with my 3.5 inch screws and put this together. Okay, so let me go ahead and get a little bit of work done, and then I'll show you kind of how we went about doing it. You can see it's pretty simple stuff. So I just have a spacer block underneath, and that puts those right at that point there. And so we need to flip this over and put these two in, and then we'll bring in our middle leg assembly. All right, so the first phase is now done. You can see went together fairly good. Now I did use a couple of clamps to kind of bring everything together, and you know, this is construction grade lumber, so it's not always the straightest. So you know, you will have to work with it a little bit. We are going to add some leveling feet on all 6 of our legs, so we can level it off perfectly. So we will do that when we get a little closer. So now what we have to do is go ahead and put on our other boards, which are the 23 inch pieces. Now the challenge that we have is because we're going to connect our next set of legs going this way to the right. The challenge that we have is down here, because we have to connect that 23 inch board, but we really can't access this connection very well. And that is gonna cause us a bit of an issue. So what we could do possibly, really, I think the simplest thing is to go ahead and add pocket holes and put in some pocket screws there. But just for fun, really, I'm gonna see if I can't access these legs through this corner and just put them in that way. It's gonna take a little bit of finagling to be able to do that, but I'm just gonna see. The other consideration, obviously, is we have screws going in this way, going in this way, and that could impede our efforts a little bit as well. Now up here, it's not an issue. We have easy access on the back side here to put in our screws. Obviously, we do have to miss these screws, but down here we don't have access, and we want those on that same plane. So let me figure out exactly how I'm going to do it, and I'll show you the end result, and we'll talk about what we did to get it all together. Well, after kicking it around a little bit, you can see what I ultimately decided to do was just come at it from the side. We did have to avoid these screws here, but just come at it with a pretty steep angle right into there. It's nice and sturdy, and I think it'll work just fine. And it's easy to plug the holes with the rest of them. So we'll go ahead and continue on. All right, so that is the basic frame. So now it's just a matter of putting on our fence picket boards. So our bottom will go from one side to the other, and then the top will just go, the boards will go this way and this way. And we'll show you what that looks like when we get all those cut and positioned. All right, we have one shelf in place. And so what we wound up doing is we measured the distance, which should be 16 3/4, and then we notched out a little 1.5 inch square. So now we're flush out here, we're flush on the sides. And so the two outside boards that we required notches, we left at the 5.5, which left us 10 in the middle. So we ripped these down on the table saw to 5 inches wide, and they fit just perfectly. And so what we'll do as far as attaching them, we'll put in some glue, and then we'll use some 1.25 inch staples, narrow crown staples, and pop them all along the edge. So once I have that one done, now I'm going to move up to my upper shelf up here and go ahead and knock that out. So we'll get that done. All right, so that shelf is basically the same as that one. That worked out to be 25 3/4, notched out 1.5 inch, and we went with a full fence picket width here, and then we did have to rip these down to 5 inches, full fence picket here, and you can see there too. We haven't attached these at all yet, but we will with glue and 1.25 inch staples. Okay, so now on the bottom here, this gets a little challenging because for the two outside pickets, we need to wrap around this center leg. So what we'll do is we'll cut it to length, and then we'll just scribe it right here. We'll put the board into place, and then we'll scribe on both sides of the legs, and then we'll notch it out that 1.5 inch, just like we do on the corners here. So it won't be that terribly bad, but with just a little bit extra work with that one. Okay, so we'll get that done, and then we'll show you what that looks like. So I definitely would encourage you to get a real world dimension here, but I measured from the outside to the outside 41 1/4. That's what I cut my board. And then I'm just going to come in here and mark there and mark there. And then all I'm going to do basically is take my carpenter square, scribe a line, and then make it 1.5 inch deep. Same thing over here, scribe a line and then just make it 1.5 inch deep. And then with my jigsaw, just take that out. Same thing here, 1.5 inch square right there on both sides. And we'll show you what that looks like when I get those notches made. All right, so I wanted to show you this. It actually fits pretty good. You can see it's flush here like we want it to be. And but you can see here, it seems like it's off, and it's off because it is. And that's what happens when you're using construction grade materials. They do tend to be a little bit warped and twisted and whatnot, but this is relatively straight, this board here. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of conform this, if you will, or vice versa. But once we get this positioned into place, we can kind of push this and more or less into alignment. So it should work out okay. And then we're going to do the same thing to the other side, and both of these pieces then will kind of hold this more square than what it currently is. All right, we have that next piece cut and fitted, and you can see it was a tight fit, but pretty good fit. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and lock all these down with glue and 1.25 inch staples after I do a little bit of sanding. But when we're placing these bottom boards in, we want to try and square up the whole unit just a little bit. So I think I'm going to start at the bottom, and then of course we have our 2 5-inch boards that we still have to put in place there. But I think what we're going to do is start at the bottom, try and get it squared up a little bit. Then I'll move to this top, and then we'll move down here, because it looks like our top is pretty well square. It's the bottom that's off. And one of these boards, one of these legs, I didn't realize it when I was using it, was really twisted. And I suspect that's what's caused this issue. But we'll get it as close as we can. It's not a huge issue, even if we can't get it that close, because it's going to be painted, it's going to be distressed, and it's going to be rustic anyhow. So it's not a huge deal for our purpose. But we're going to try and square it up a little bit, and get these all nailed down, and then we'll put our top on. Now our top is nothing fancy. We're going to use a rubber wood butcher block top, a prefab unit from Home Depot that the customer picked out, and we're just going to use little L brackets to attach the top. Once this is on the ground, you won't really see those little L brackets. It's the simplest solution, and it'll certainly serve the purpose that it needs to serve. So we'll go ahead and get that done, and we'll kind of show you what the finished product looks like. All right, so we did get most of that twist taken out. There is a little bit of an overhang here that, but you can see on the back side here, it's nice and tight here, nice and tight here, pretty tight here. See, this is flush, real flush, and there's just a tiny bit of overhang, but definitely squared up pretty nice. Okay, so now we're just going to put those last 2 5-inch wide boards in place. Go ahead and glue and staple all the rest of the boards, and then our frame will be complete and we'll be ready for our top. All right, so there is the finished kitchen island. Now I know I've kind of jumped ahead several steps, but let me kind of bring you up to speed what we did. So we did get this top. This is a prefab top. It is 4 foot by 25 inches, and we picked that up at Lowe's. It's some kind of hard rubber wood, you know, it's unfinished bare wood top, and that was about $110. And then the customer wanted this little towel rack. I don't love it, but that was the design they requested. So we went ahead and added that on there, and all we did was took a fence picket, ripped it down to 2 inches, and then I needed a little bit of space to be able to hang the towel, so I just used a couple more fence pickets for spacers, and then put that one on the outside. That's what they wanted, so that's what we got. Now, one thing I've never really tried before on these Farmhouse X's, what I did was I added this extra little detail, and what that does is rather than worry about where these two connect here, that one bar kind of holds them all together. And by having this extra detail, this extra step, to me, especially with the farmhouse look that they're going for, that will just add another dimension, a little bit more detail. Now they're gonna fill all these holes and paint the base, and then the top is just probably gonna get some kind of food grade oil treatment, like you would for a butcher block top, and leave it at that. Of course, we've got all of our fence picket shelves in place now, and then I did the same thing over on this side with these cross pieces as well. So pretty good looking finished product, and hopefully I'll be able to get a picture from the customer once they finish it out. Now they did ask also for these, there must be something they're going to put in here, because they asked for these kind of side rails on this one shelf. So we went ahead and added those as well. So that's it. That's the finished product. So the plans will have all of, you know, everything you see here all detailed out for you. And then one other thing we didn't talk about are those little guys right there. The just very simple little L brackets that hold, so there's one at every leg. And of course, when you're just standing here looking at it, the way those are placed, you never see those. They're just too small, and unless you actually bend over and look underneath it, you don't see it. So that's it for this one. I hope you give this one a try. And of course, you can modify it with you could add drawers, you could add more shelves, whatever. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching.